Good evening. The Gauteng Education Department has extended the online application deadline for grade 1 and grade 8 learners from the 12th to the 14th of August. This decision was informed by a system failure on the 9th and 10th of August, which prevented parents from uploading relevant documents for a period of 2 days. Gauteng Education MEC Matume Chilwane was speaking during a media briefing intended to give an update on the online registration process in Kempton Park.
Has urged almost 100,000 parents to conclude incomplete online applications before the deadline. He says the department received over 700,000 applications, 11,000 more than the previous academic year. He also reassured parents that all grade 1 and grade 8 learners will get school admission.
The placement period will begin on the 16th of September. That's when the first batch of communication will go out, 16th of September. Parents will start getting SMSs, placement offers. And this will continue until the last learner.
The MEC has acknowledged the growing demand of public schooling in the province. According to Chilwane, 310 out of 660 high schools have received record high applications exceeding the school's capacity. While more needs to be done, Chilwane says 100 schools are expected to be built over the next 5 years to address capacity challenges.
Research has showed us that at a minimum, you get 500 to 1,000 people coming into Gauteng every day rather. And those numbers ultimately are putting pressure on the system because they bring their families. So in the next 5 years, we are targeting 100 schools that we'll be building. The schools that we need in the province, if to stabilize the system entirely, it's well above 300.
Parents have 7 days to accept or decline the offers given to them and can expect a response from the department within a period of 14 days. Mbalentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
To unpack this a bit more further for us, we're now joined by Deputy CEO of FETSA's Organization for Governing Bodies, Riaan Van Der Berg, and he joins us now in studio. Riaan, thank you so much for your time this evening. Of course, we've seen the Minister, or the MEC rather, for the Gauteng Education Department there, extending that deadline, of course, saying that there was glitches on the 9th and the 10th of August. What do you say as the School Governing Bodies Federation?
Yes, it's always concerning if technology works and then doesn't work. So that's always a concern to know how the integrity of the system or the hosting of the system went. And we don't want to see parents disadvantaged. So at this point in time, the extension, I think, is required and is fair, as long as the schools also get some extra time to process the extra days of applications. We must keep in mind that schools have to verify all the applications. It's not an online placement system, but it's an online queuing system.
I'm sure you've received some complaints from parents. Maybe tell us more about that. Did any of them raise their concerns when trying to apply for their children, particularly on those 2 days, and they could not get those applications processed?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything. I think the MEC's notice or announcement was the first that we heard about the system being down. A lot of our schools were geared for the early part of the application process, and there's such a drive for finding room for your child in school in Gauteng that I think a lot of parents would have applied in the early stages of the application period, which started a month ago. So yeah, we haven't heard of any complaints or any problems. Early on we heard some complaints and problems, and then the schools have a mass of applications to verify, and I think that's where the pressure points lie. Yeah. The pressure in the province is not in the online application process, it's finding seats for all the learners.
And I was actually going to come to that. I was going to say, what does this extension now mean, particularly for the schools? Yes,
we must keep in mind that schools are, in many cases, fairly understaffed. The department doesn't give a whole host of administration staff, and the schools that employ extra staff in the office, the governing body positions, it is their capacity that needs to process all these. And a lot of our schools and a lot of the schools in the province get far more applications than the number of seats they have available. So they have to process all of those applications, even though it might be second or third or fourth choice school. The school must go through the process, verify the documents. It is a very tedious administration process at the school.
Earlier on, you touched on the fact that this process can be very stressful for parents, particularly for a province like us with the population, and also looking at the issues around in-migration of those coming to live and work in Gauteng. How important is this process to be carried out fairly?
Very much so, and our regulations govern that fairly well. There's a ranking order. It's the distance between the home and the school within the feeder zone. But you touched on what's really the important issue, the population density. There's changes in the demography, but there's also a change in the density, and we're not seeing new schools being built, especially in the areas where the parents are moving into. Higher density makes for overcrowded schools. I think we've got 20% of the nation's learners in this province and only 8% or 9% of the nation's schools. So do the math, we're already at double the average size of school in the country, and that makes for a big problem. And if we don't see new infrastructure being developed, each individual school will just be overrun with overcrowding.
Do you trust that the department will be able to place these learners on time, particularly when you look at the fact that this year the process was a bit more slower because of the elections and, of course, the issues around forming this government of provincial unity? That also stalled things a bit for the education department. Do you think that they'll be able to meet their deadline and be able to place learners on time?
Yeah, we're hopeful. The schools are really geared to manage this process well, because the intake of your school is one of the important things of the school journey. We must keep in mind that parents are very emotional about their child's education journey. So this is the number one and probably the most important engagement between the school, the government, and the parents to get their children into the school of choice, the school where they want to be. This year's process started slightly earlier than last year, which gives us more time. But yeah, we hope that this would go better than the previous year. Last year, I think in December, there were still parents that didn't know which school their child was going to be placed at. Given the numbers, we are concerned that this year is running into some trouble. On day one of the application process, we were about 40% higher in number of applications processed. Now, on the one hand, it's great to celebrate the system working. On the other hand, it's a little bit of a red flag to say, why so many more people, and do we have seats for them in the schools that they choose?
What is your advice to parents who still need to apply for their children for grade 1 and grade 8 next year?
Yeah, you should have done it already. My advice is, why did you wait so late? Get your paperwork together, get your fingers tapping on the keyboards, make sure that you use this extension. It is not just to be blasé about. This is an investment in the future of the country. Your child's education will change the trajectory of your life. So make sure that you take it very seriously and invest, understand how the system works, make sure that you understand how the system works. If you need help, go to a walk-in center or go to the school of your choice and let them help you, but make sure that you're on the waiting list.
And what is your advice to parents who don't get their kids placed in the schools of their choice? Because that's always a problem, especially in Gauteng.
Yeah, that's a very difficult one. The regulations determine the ranking, and sometimes we will have parents that are saddened by the fact that they didn't make the cut. The population density, as mentioned, makes for that sad case of you might be living close to the school of your choice, but you might be lower down on the ranking. We have an appeal process in the regulations, so make sure that you know how that process works. We have a process to go verify and see, were you the last on the list, or did you make the cut fairly or unfairly? And then look at your second and third choice school. We're very fortunate in this province where a lot of schools have overlapping feeder zones. The difficulties here, the parents' choice and the drive to the search for quality education. In many cases, good schools are they find a burden in their success because the more successful they are, the more people want to go there, and then the waiting list becomes long, and someone will be saddened.
And maybe if you can clarify for the parents, what informs the placement for their children? How do their children get, placed into certain schools? Just to, of course, give them that comfortability that, certain processes are done to ensure that, their children are placed in schools.
Yeah, so there's a ranking order. The highest ranking, well, first of all, a school has a feeder zone, a demarcated feeder zone, and that's available on the GDE admissions website to know if you live in the school's feeder zone. Then it's the home address, the distance, the shortest distance between the home and the school within the feeder zone. Siblings, work address, and then a feeder zone, a widened feeder zone of 30 kilometers, which I think never comes into play in this province because people live so close to the schools that they want. So yes, home address is the number one key ranking order that would get you into the school.
All right. Thank you so much for that insight. That is Deputy CEO of FETSIS Organization for Governing Bodies, Riaan Van Der Berg, just giving us his insight there when it comes to that announcement we saw earlier on by the MEC for Education in Gauteng when it comes to the extension of the online applications for grades 1 and grades 8 for the year 2025.